Thank you so much for joining our webinar on the Gavel Legal Server integration today. On behalf of everyone speaking, I just want to thank you all for attending and for being excited about this project. So before we get started, we're going to do a round of introductions. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Victoria. I'm a legal innovator at A2J Tech, and I also helped develop and automate some of the forms that we're going to be discussing and hopefully demoing for you today. And then I'll pass it along to Michael.
Hey, my name is Michael Hofrichter. I'm one of the support and onboarding staff at LegalServer, along with our project team lead. And I was the project manager for getting the Gavel LegalServer integration up and running.
Thanks, Michael. Cami, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Cami, and I'm a customer success associate over at Gavel. So if you're using Gavel and you have any issues, you'll reach out and you'll likely reach me or another one of my teammates.
And we very much appreciate that on a regular basis. All right. So just to introduce the project a little bit, as some of you probably know, this integration was built out thanks to funding from the Legal Services Corporation as part of a technology initiative grant, also known as a TIG grant, probably, as you're going to hear me say pretty often. The purpose behind TIGs is to encourage attorneys and legal aids to embrace technology, not in order to replace them, but rather to make their lives easier so they can focus their time and efforts on more complex or substantive matters, or on taking more clients, or just on focusing the clients that they do have. So the TIG that funded this project was granted to Southern Minnesota Regional Legal Services, also known as SMERLS. I think some of the SMERLS folks are joining us today. Hi to all of you. Before this project started, SMERLS had used document automation platforms in the past, but they had two concerns going in. And one was that they wanted to make sure it was going to be cost effective for a large number of users. And two, they wanted a way to make sure that they could easily keep those forms that they're using up to date. So they wanted a long form project. So this project uses API, or an application programming interface, to build a bridge between Gavel, a document automation platform that we're going to do a deeper dive into in just a second, and LegalServer, which I hope that a lot of you probably are familiar with, but it is one of the most popular case management systems in use across legal aid. So our goal was to use this integration to pull data fields from LegalServer into matching pre-coded Gavel forms. And that would generate a working document that would then be stored in the case file in LegalServer. So that's our broad overview of how this works. But before we get into that and demoing that, we're going to talk a little bit about document automation and what Gavel is. So I'm going to pass it over to Cami.
Thank you, Victoria. Wonderful. So here at Gavel, we are a document automation infrastructure. And what is document automation? Document automation is the process of creating documents from a set of rules. If you can identify rules for your templates that you draft using if this, then that statements, it can help generate error-free documents in a lot less time than going through manually and kind of changing everything. So here at Gavel, we utilize variables. So logic, calculations, and repeating items are a few of the things that you'll utilize to gather that data to then input into your document and really seamlessly gather those documents. Perfect. So why document automation? So a few things the document automation can help you with is efficiency. It can definitely reduce the amount of time that you're populating forms, leaving time for more clients or for more legal work that you need. On average, we find that users, once they're fully up to date and have everything implemented, they're saving 20 or more hours a week from automating these repetitive tasks. Accuracy. Whatever is inputted into our data is what's going to be inputted into that document. So instead of maybe making a little error somewhere, you're going to be able to have a little bit more efficiency and accuracy. Also, employee satisfaction. Like I said, saving 20 hours a week on automating these repetitive tasks. These are usually the tasks that people don't want to be doing anyways. So you're able to kind of seamlessly do that. Next slide. Perfect. So what are we at Gavel? Like I said, we are a document automation infrastructure. And our whole goal here is to kind of help give you back control on your time and how you work. So we want you to be able to reclaim that by creating these effortless, accurate automations to replace the manual, tedious parts of your legal practice. So Victoria's been nice enough to input this video, so we can just kind of watch it so I don't have to tell you.
Are you guys able to hear that audio real quick?
I don't hear it.
Oh, okay. It's just music, so I don't think we're missing out on anything.
So this is kind of what that looks like to where you would input that data. This is what we call a workflow. Wonderful. And that's a little bit about Gavel.
Thank you so much for that overview. Oop. Here we go. Apologies. All right, so again, back to the project impact. Thanks to this integration and thanks to the help from Gavel and from LegalServer, we've created forms for 2 different topics. Family law forms, which can be used throughout Minnesota, and also SSI and SSDI forms, which can be used nationwide. So as we'll demonstrate later on today, those forms are now available in the Gavel repository and are free to use for your organization. But now we're going to dive in a little bit deeper into what the integration looks like and how it works. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael.
Sure. So thank you. You can go to the next slide.
All right.
The integration starts by LegalServer checking your Gavel server, right? Everyone gets a Gavel instance. Your organization would have one. LegalServer would then check for any workflows that are available in Gavel, right? This is that first API call that's being made, is what's out there for us to automate. Once you've gotten that, right, you can click on editing any of those, and it then, on the next slide, it'll show you how you can start setting up the metadata for it, right? And you can move on to the next slide. The metadata here is pretty much what we do for our standard document templates within LegalServer, right? It lets you set the name of it, lets you set it as active, lets you pick problem code or county or language, just the same way that the document templates within LegalServer let you pick those settings as well. Once you've done that, on the next slide, you get to set all of the variables, right? You can map all the variables that are in Gavel, right? The API call about the Gavel workflow tells it all of the different names of the variables that it's asking, right? And so that shows up in the question column on the left. And then on the in the middle, you're able to pick the specific variable from LegalServer that you want to map over to it. I think as a result of this project and some of the work that we've done, there's something like 1,600 fields and what is it, 1,600 fields and 20 subtables that are available in this, right? So when you're mapping things over, you can map, it'll automatically tell you this is a Boolean on one end, it's got to be a Boolean on the other end, right? You've got a number, it's got to be a number. We're doing some of that validation in the background so that those all work. But then we're also coming through here and letting you map some many-to-ones to those repeating items that are happening in Gavel. So you could have a repeating item that lists all of the adverse parties, and you can list all of the adverse parties, and you can pull their name and their age and the adverse party type over from LegalServer into Gavel. Now, unlike with the document templates that you're used to in LegalServer, this doesn't do any filtering, right? There are ways in Gavel to filter the results to say that you're looking, just show me a table of all of the adverse parties who are over the age of 18, or just show me all the family members who are male, or just show me all the family members who are children, right? You can do that in your template in Gavel. So we didn't build that into the LegalServer connection here. One of the things that we also do as we fill this out is that we validate, right? We want to make sure that you know that if you're not adding all of the fields, right, and that there are still required fields that need to be collected, that those fields will be collected in Gavel after you launch it from LegalServer, right? Any variable that you map over that turns out to be null is going to get asked by Gavel before the document is generated, right? If it is a required variable. The other side of this that we did a lot of development for is on the next slide. And it's a question of how do you get the documents back to LegalServer, right? You've generated your document, it's great. How do you get it back? And so there's two ways that you can do it. Both now create case notes and attach the document to case notes so that you can easily find them. The first is just using the case email address. Right? Every case in LegalServer has an email address. You can use that to get the document back, see those documents. Right? If you don't want to use the case email address, you can use a webhook in LegalServer. You can configure that with a bearer token, and then you can put that in there and have it automatically get saved to get the Gavel workflow documents saved to that webhook. Gavel will save it as a files.zip file. We'll save that, but we'll also unzip it and make all of those documents available to you on a case. So what does this actually look like on a case? We can see the next slide, but at this point, I'd like to do a quick live demo so that you can see what this really looks like. And Victoria, screen sharing is disabled.
Oh, okay. Let me just make sure that you can share now. All right, try again.
Yep. All right. So you should all be seeing my document test site. Great. So here we've got this template section, this block that shows all of the Gavel templates. And it's got the names of the templates. And if I can edit those templates, I can click into any of these and see those specific templates, right? And the details. And then at the bottom, I can see which variables have been mapped. Right, and notice on the right side, we've got the county matches and the language matches, which you would expect from the document template mapping. I want to show off this signing document with signatures example as something that I think really shows what the benefit is of this connection here. So when I click this, it's going to send those variables in the background, and then it gives me a link to continue that session. Right, clicking signing document with signatures is now going to open that document with all of the other details. And this is an example of a workflow that's going to give me a retainer agreement. Right, that's the idea here, is that I've got a signed retainer agreement that's first going to be signed by my my staff attorney, right? I'm Hofrichter at LegalServer.org. Right, this is a retainer agreement for test. I can see a generic copy here. Right, I just linked to Google, but that's an example. You can put all sorts of the different details in here, and I even pulled in the legal problem code. I can then say if I'm ready to sign it, I can click continue. As the attorney, I can then sign. I can say continue, right? The attorney signed this. I can then grab the client's email address, which is what I was doing here. I made it available. And then the directions that I put in here are to say, copy the email, use it for the continuation link, and then click continue here, and then use the send link to client to sign, right? This would then let the client get a copy of this document and this interview, LegalServer.org. I can click continue. The client then gets an email, and when they click the link in that email, they'll be brought right here. Right? Attorney LegalServer staff has prepared a document for you to sign. It's a retainer agreement. You can see a generic copy here. The options selected are option A, right? And the problem is bankruptcy. And all of those emails, right? The continuation link, all of those details are something that you can customize in Gavel in the back end, right? This is the emailing session to continue later. I just revised it. And of course, this could be personalized to your specific organization. But then the client can say that they're willing to sign it, they can sign it, And then once they've signed it, right, they immediately get a copy of it, and a copy is returned to LegalServer by email, right? So this is generating the document. I can open up this PDF. I see both signatures. I see my sample retainer agreement, right? And because of the features in LegalServer and setting up in the interview, right, where we said the output documents, right, send the finalized documents to the attorney email or the case email address, right? That would happen. The retainer agreement would come back to the case. So that's sort of how this integration works, right? You click the link from LegalServer, it takes you to Gavel. You finish that document in Gavel, and then that document is automatically populated back to LegalServer if you've set up that workflow properly, and you can continue on with whatever you need to do. So with that, I'll turn it back over to whoever's next.
Thank you so much. All right, let me see if I can get back to our slideshow. All right, are you all able to see the slideshow again?
Yes.
Okay, great. So as I mentioned earlier, you can now access all of the documents we automated as part of this integration on the document marketplace in Gavel, which is a repository of document workflows created by Gavel users that are available for your organization to use. And I do believe you need a Gavel account in order to use those. Cami, correct me if I'm wrong. But I am going to walk you through how to access the forms that we created as part of this project now. So on this side, you can see the URL. I'm just going to leave it up here for anybody who wants to jot that down or take a screenshot, but this is where you can find the Gavel Marketplace. And I encourage you to explore this not only for the workflows that we created as part of this project, but also as a resource for seeing what else is out there and what else can be useful for your practice. All right, so when you get to that site, you're going to see a search bar at the top. And right now, it's not accessible through the acronym, so you are going to have to type in Southern Minnesota Regional Legal Services up at the top. And then you'll be able to see all of the workflows that we generated as part of this project. They're all free to use, so I encourage you all to make the most of that. And in order to actually use it, you're going to click on it. And then there's going to be that big purple button to the right where it says get started, and it'll launch the workflow right from there. And it's going to look something like this. All right, so now that I've talked about how to find the Gavel Marketplace, we also want to talk about how to find the integration. So like I said, you do need an account to be able to use those workflows on Gavel. Gavel works on a sliding scale pricing for legal aid organizations. So if you're interested in that, if you want to learn more, feel free to reach out to Cami or to help@gavel.io to discuss adding those workflows to your server, setting that up, and the pricing for all of that. And then if you have a LegalServer account already, you can reach out to their support team. Michael is so helpful on their support team. You can reach out to him as well. And the integration is $2,500 plus $50 per month. Is there anything I need to add on that, Michael or Cami? All right. Now I know we've gotten a lot of questions in the chat, so I want to leave plenty of time for those. If you'd like to raise your hand or if you'd like to drop it in the Q&A, we'd be happy to get to those. Okay, Melissa, I see that you have a question. I don't know if you're able to unmute necessarily, but if you could drop that in the chat for all of us. Or Lacey, you can help me out because I've got a bunch of different Zoom windows open right now. Hi, Melissa. Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
And I'm also happy to show another example that's got some repeats in it as well. All right, so in terms of the SharePoint document management integration, If you've got Gavel, the answer is that the document would then come back to LegalServer and be stored in the LegalServer storage. If you're using the email feature, so emails back to LegalServer, those emails are automatically saved to a SharePoint folder if a SharePoint folder exists. So that's where they'd end up. We're not automatically unzipping that file though. So if there are multiple documents, it may not unzip. If you're using the webhook, we have planned development later in the next month or two to modify the webhook so that it'll save to SharePoint if a SharePoint folder exists. That is planned, and hopefully it'll be done. I mean, fingers crossed, September, but we'll see if that happens. Right. So for clients who don't have an email address, right, these, I think basically these are designed for interviews that are started by your staff attorney, right? So it starts there and it goes forward from that. And then it's a question of, do you want to share that interview or some of those questions in that interview with your client?
And then Heidi, are you suggesting, a document marketplace sort of for not just Gavel, but for other document automation platforms? Is that what you mean? You can add that on in the chat or send in another Q&A. But if that's what your question is, there isn't a single library of automated workflows that I know of. Possibly because I don't know how that would work with all the platforms speaking to one another and making sure that not every document automation platform is the same. So, I mean, that would be great if that existed.
Yeah, I think the issue with that might be that a lot of document automation platforms gather their data in very different ways. So it might be kind of hard for that to work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know when, and different people will store their drafts differently. When I was building for DocAssemble, I obviously use GitHub. Gavel doesn't have the same export functionality. When I built for LHI, right, I saved my own copies to GitHub, but I couldn't really do anything with them in GitHub. So it just really depends on the nature of the document template and the system you're working with. In terms of in terms of the building out the templates, I think it's really simple, but I build them out differently than other people probably do, simply because of some of my own coding background. But Gavel has a wonderful Word sidebar, I don't know what it's called.
An add-in, I think.
Yeah. That will read the variables from your workflow and then let you put them in and transform them into your generated document.
Right.
And so that's really nice. I tend to do things in the reverse. I start with my template and I work backwards, and then I create the variables and then add them to Gavel. It really just depends on how you want to build that out.
Yeah, Tim, to speak to your question, you don't need to have a coding background. When I started this job, I think 2 years ago now, I didn't have a coding background. I was trained as a lawyer, so the approach is very different, and I would say it's incredibly user-friendly. It's easy to pick up on the fly, so to speak. Brittany, great question. How do you get funding for a project like this? We applied for a A2J grant, like I said in the beginning, a technology initiative grant. I believe the cycle has closed for this year, but there's always next year. Highly encourage you guys to look into that if it's something that you're interested in or expanding on this project as well. You can definitely reach out to us for partnership on or guidance on that.
Yeah. In terms of the question about text messages, I don't think that's currently possible with Gavel. And so that would have to be done either with a different tool or not over text message. In terms of,
it is web-based though, so and we have them. It's compatible with mobile, so if they are using a cell phone, they're able to use the mobile site to fill it out.
Yeah. In terms of customizable, when you get one of these workflows off of the marketplace, it's copied to your instance of Gavel. So you get to make any modifications to it as you go forward, right? If you've got a different variable name, if you've got a different source, if you want to tweak it, right, you can do all of those different pieces. So. I will let Victoria, either you or Laura, talk about the disability case documents because I don't know the answer.
Sure. So we broke it down into, and I think this might respond to another question about adding more Social Security forms as the case moves forward. The way that we approached this project, and this goes for both the disability forms and for the family law forms, is we sort of chunked out the case progress into different stages. So we tackled forms for each stage of the case. And so how much staff time did it take to populate the data in LegalServer? I have a spreadsheet of the different times because we needed to record this for grant purposes. Usually what we did was for the more complex forms, it pretty much cut all of that drafting time for briefs, for review, for file review, for medical record requests, things like that, in half. So that just goes to show how effective this integration has been for the Smurl staff team.
For the question about budget and timeline and setting up, developing the Gavel forms, we're happy to work with you on a budget that works best for you and your legal aid server or your firm. So we're happy to help. Work with us, just kind of contact us. Timeline, it's going to be dependent on what you're building out and how robust it is. We do have a panel of Gavel experts. Some of them are here, so who are willing to help in setting those up. So, and we're also always available for ed support if you have any questions while building things out.
For this particular project, I believe the timeline due to the grant timeline was about a year. Laura, I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was a year.
I believe it was 2 years.
Oh, okay.
2 or 3 years.
And we ended up actually finishing up this stage of the project way before that 2-year mark. So it is doable. Speaking to bankruptcy interviews, we haven't done that for this project in particular, but I do believe there are templates on the document marketplace for bankruptcy. I would just double check the jurisdiction on that. We have a question also in the Q&A about testing Gavel with Dragon Naturally Speaking. I am not familiar with that tool. We did not test it ourselves. I don't know if Cami or Michael know of other projects that have used that.
We didn't do any testing with a speech to text player.
Not that I know of, but I can check in on it and see.
In terms of the question about sharing workflows, right? The workflows end up in the Gavel marketplace and are easy to transfer. I know we've had some instances where we've needed to troubleshoot bugs and stuff like that that have come up. It's really easy to just shoot an email to Gavel's help team and say, can you copy workflow X from Smurl's instance of Gavel to LegalServer's instance of Gavel. And so we're able to make that happen. And that tends to be very painless. The longer piece is then building out the data mapping in LegalServer. That takes a little bit longer depending on how many fields are involved in that interview.
As for sharing example workflows for LSC funded organizations, other than what Michael just shared with us, I mean, events like this, attending panels like this, we've also come into contact or partnered with the Minnesota Legal Aid Partners Meeting and Minnesota State Support. But I wish there was a global way to share for LSC funded organizations specifically. But maybe that's something that could be a TIG grant in the future. You never know. Any other questions? We can also do another demo if people would be interested in that. On this slide, I also have our contact information if more questions pop up or if you'd like to see a little bit more of the integration, if you want to reach out and see about adding the integration onto your own organization's accounts.
So I have not done any testing regarding accessibility for this. I don't know, Cami, if you have at Gavel.
No, I haven't.
Yeah. In terms of organizations using LegalServer now, the integration is available. Just email support. We'll send you a change order and get that enabled for you. Once that change order is signed and ready, it's set to go. I don't have the medical requests for disability queued up. That would have to be someone who's more familiarity with those.
Yeah, I can definitely pull one up. Give me just a second.
One of the nice things is that if you're using a docx template, which you can use for Gavel, you can also use a whole bunch of different functions within the template. So you can populate tables, you can convert dates, you can do math in the template and subtract amounts. You could list repeating items with commas or comma and, right? There's lots of fun features that you can do in the template itself.
All right, I'm going to adjust sharing so I can pull up the client-facing interview. Just give me one more second. So what I have pulled up here is going to be a medical record release request for several different medical organizations in Minnesota. And so I think this also goes to the question of what a client-facing interview looks like. You can adjust this using CSS as well, and that might also speak to accessibility if you wanted to, for example, make some of the font bigger for some of your harder vision clients, things like that. All right, I'm going to just autofill these, but it is just like a questionnaire. And then for this particular instance, like I said, we had several different Minnesota-based or frequently used medical service providers. So you can select that from the drop down here. Again, I'm going to use my handy autofill feature here to test this out. And you can see I'm just flipping through this interview. I didn't launch it from LegalServer, but if I had, it would have pre-filled some of that information for me. So the timing is pretty similar there in terms of using my autofill tool or using the LegalServer integration. And I can request up to 3 different medical provider release forms with this interview. I'm not going to for the purposes of loading this properly for all of you. and then I get my documents, and it's just like that. Hopefully that answers that question.
So a client-facing questionnaire in this instance would not feed into LegalServer unless that client already knew what their LegalServer case number was. And yes, all of the fields within Gavel can have branching logic, whether you're doing it on a per question basis or a set of questions basis, it can have branching logic.
Yes. Any other questions? I know Kimmy's typing furiously over there. All right, well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending. If there are no more questions, we will be sending out this recording after the fact.
There's a question here. I can do that. I've got one queued up.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so this is my example template. I think it's important so that you can see what the template looks like. This is a client letter, and then I got sort of off base and started adding random things to it. But I wanted to be able to list the client's income, and this is a repeating item in Gavel, and so it's called an income data. And then I wanted the income name, the income amount, and the income notes, and I want to make sure that the income amount was shown as currency, right? And so here I've got it for item in this list, right? Repeat these 3 boxes, and it'll do that as well. I've got that also set up for assets to do the same thing. And then here I've got an example of listing all of your family members as first name, last name, and then this is a comma list Oxford, right? So it's going to use an Oxford comma as it creates that list. And then I also wanted to give you an example of what happens when you're filtering. And so this is listing all of the family, but where gender is not male. So exclude all of the sons and just put everyone else in here. And on my test case, right, I can take a quick look at my family information. I've got son 1, child 3, daughter 2. So I've got children of multiple genders. So we can see that that'll get filtered. I can also come in here to my financial information. And I can see that I've got multiple incomes in here. I've got multiple assets in here as well. And so then when I come back to this live demo with repeats and I launch that Gavel interview, this is one where almost everything is pre-filled, right? You'll notice that this paused. It paused because LegalServer case subfolder was not filled out, right? And I'll just say test, and then click continue. It's letting me review my answers. It's also showing me those tables that were automatically filled in. And then if I click continue, right, it's now generating the document. Had I not automatically filled this in, it would have had me type in all those asset options, all those income options. You can map custom fields, right? So when I now look at this, right, it's showing me those different amounts. It's showing me, right, I've got son 1, daughter 2, child 3, right? Non-male children are daughter and child. It's doing some nice math for me, right? The application, right, is showing me the full date, Saturday, February 1st, 2014. They applied in February of 2014. And then it's giving me some math in terms of how long it's taken us to get them this letter generated. If this weren't a test case, this would be a horrible number, but it's nice to see a nice big number here, and being able to do that. Custom fields are available when we're looking at this on the back end in LegalServer. Right. Let's go to actions, edit this document. The mapping is only LegalServer to Gavel. You're right. So you can see here, I've mapped that family repeating unit to family within a LegalServer and then specified those specific fields. So I think it's basically any field that you can put on a case profile is available to be mapped. And then any custom fields on the matter record that you have. And then in terms of repeating items, right, we've got the adverse party assets, assignments, charges, events, income, notes, service or phases, tasks and deadlines. So there's things that are available to map over to Gavel that aren't available to be mapped into LegalServer's native document templates. Right. The only mapping that happens from Gavel to LegalServer are that you can map the case email address that then comes back. You can map the matter globally unique ID, which is needed if you're using the webhook. You can use a subfolder if you're using the webhook to specify that. But those are the only variables that we're looking for when we get data back from Gavel.
Any other questions or anything else that people would like to see with this integration? Yes, we will make this recording available after this event wraps up. We'll send it out to everybody who registered for the event, and it will also include our contact information if you'd like to learn more, if you think of any other questions, or if you'd like to share out that contact info to anybody else in your organization too to learn more. But other than that, thank you so much for everyone who is attending this, who's listening to this, and who's excited about this amazing integration.